Right now, the mess is not your problem. The signal your brain is receiving is. The moment you look at the room, your brain does not see objects, it sees decisions. Where to start, what matters, what to ignore, what takes too long, what feels unfinished. All of those processes activate at the same time, and your system begins scanning everything at once. That creates internal noise, and when noise increases, execution drops. This is why you pause, delay, or leave the room without acting, not because you chose not to act, but because your system could not resolve the overload fast enough to begin. Scripture already defines this limitation as structural, not personal failure. For he knows how we are formed. He remembers that we are dust. Psalm 103:14. The system has limits, and when those limits are exceeded, output slows down. You feel this as hesitation, but it is processing conflict. One part of your mind is pushing to act, while another is still trying to organize the input. That conflict creates friction, and friction stops movement. Over time, your brain begins to associate the environment with that friction. So the next time you look at the same space, the shutdown happens sooner. This is why the problem repeats even when you want change. The pattern is already running before you act, and once it starts, your body follows automatically. The longer this loop continues, the more the label forms: lazy, unmotivated, disorganized. But that label is applied after the system fails, not before. The failure begins at the level of input, not effort. This is why trying harder does not solve it. Pressure increases the load, and increased load deepens the shutdown. The system is not resisting effort, it is protecting itself from overload. Your system is not avoiding the task, it is reacting to unresolved input loops. Every visible object triggers a micro-decision, and each micro-decision stays open until it is resolved. When too many remain open, your brain holds them in active processing. This creates a stack of unfinished instructions, and the stack competes for attention. Instead of executing one action, your system keeps scanning all possible actions. The pattern becomes predictable: scan, evaluate, delay, repeat. Each cycle increases load and reduces clarity. This is why you can stand in the same place for minutes without starting. The system is working, but it is working in analysis, not execution. Scripture identifies this as a pattern issue, not a discipline issue. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Conformed means repeating the same internal process without interruption. The pattern is not the mess itself. The pattern is how your mind processes the mess. When input remains unfiltered, the pattern continues automatically. This is why effort alone fails. Effort adds pressure, but pressure does not resolve open loops. It often increases them. The only way to change the pattern is to interrupt the loop at the level of input. If the input stays scattered, the output will stay blocked. If the input becomes singular and controlled, the system can shift from scanning to executing. This is the pivot point. Scripture does not instruct you to organize your environment first. It instructs you to regulate your internal input before action begins. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. This is not passive comfort, it is a directive to redirect mental load when your system is saturated. The word burdened describes accumulated internal weight, not external tasks. When that weight is active, your processing slows and your output drops. Another instruction defines the control point. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. Heart refers to your internal processing center, where input is filtered and decisions are formed. Whatever enters that system becomes the signal that drives your behavior. If the signal is fragmented, your actions will fragment. If the signal is controlled, your actions will align. This is why verbal input is required. You are not trying to fix the room yet. You are replacing the signal your brain is using to operate. When you speak a clear and repeated input, you collapse multiple open loops into one directive. That reduces noise and gives your system a single path to follow. Scripture provides that input because it is structured, repeatable, and stable under pressure. Instead of reacting to every object in the room, your attention locks onto one controlled phrase. That shift creates the first moment of clarity. You are not increasing effort, you are removing interference by setting the signal. When your brain is exposed to too many unresolved inputs, it shifts out of execution mode and into protection mode. The part responsible for planning and initiating action requires clear, limited input to function efficiently. When that input becomes excessive or unstructured, activity slows and prioritization fails. At the same time, your internal threat system increases activity because uncertainty is interpreted as risk. This creates a combined state of high alert with low execution. You feel this as tension without movement. The longer the system stays in this state, the more it defaults to avoidance, because avoidance reduces immediate load. This is why stepping away or scrolling feels easier than starting. The system is selecting the lowest load option, not the most productive. Over time, this becomes learned behavior, not a conscious choice. The brain begins to associate the environment with overload before you even engage with it. Neuroscience confirms that repeated input strengthens specific neural pathways, which means whatever signal you repeat becomes easier to follow over time. Scripture already defines this replacement process. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Renewing is not a single event, it is a repeated replacement of input until the old pattern weakens. When you introduce a single controlled phrase and repeat it, you reduce competing signals. The brain no longer has to evaluate multiple options. It follows the dominant input. This lowers cognitive load, stabilizes attention, and reactivates execution pathways. Over time, the system begins to default to execution instead of scanning. You will not start by cleaning the room. You will start by controlling the signal. Stand still and select one small area, one drawer, one surface. Do not scan the entire room. That restarts the loop. Now introduce a single verbal input and repeat it out loud. I will take one thing and move it now. Keep the phrase simple and consistent. This is your control signal. Repeat it slowly while looking only at the selected area. Do not switch targets. Do not evaluate other tasks. On the next repetition, pick up one item and move it to its place, and then repeat the phrase again before the next action. This sequence replaces scanning with execution. Continue this pattern for 5 minutes without interruption. Set a timer and stop when it ends. This creates a closed loop your system can complete without overload. Scripture supports this model. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Luke 16:10. Repeat this once per day for 21 days. Do not increase the size. After 21 to 30 days, resistance will decrease. By 66 days, the pattern stabilizes. What you repeat becomes easier to follow. This is not motivation, it is pattern reinforcement. Every time you allow the scan and delay loop to run, you strengthen that pathway. The brain learns that looking at the room leads to overload and avoidance, so it activates that sequence faster the next time. This is why the problem feels worse over time, even if the environment does not change. The pattern is being reinforced through repetition. The same rule applies in reverse. When you introduce a controlled signal and follow it with a small completed action, you create a new pathway. The key is consistency, not intensity. One controlled action repeated daily has more impact than a large effort done once. Scripture defines this accumulation process. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew 6:21. Repeated attention becomes direction. Consistency strengthens the pattern.
Over time, the old loop weakens because it is no longer reinforced, and the new loop strengthens because it is repeated under the same conditions. This is how change becomes stable. This is the loop you will follow. One area, one phrase, one action. Repeat for 5 minutes daily. When the timer ends, stop. If overload returns, reset the signal and restart. Scripture defines this reset condition. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. Weakness is system limitation, not failure. Return to the input and repeat. One signal, one action, one loop, repeated daily until the pattern stabilizes.